Have you heard this music before? Do you feel it's familiar to you? It's Beethoven's for Alice. Music could be used everywhere. Even now, I've just used it to start my presentation. However, today I'm not going to talk about Beethoven's music, but familiar music. In what ways do students use familiar music as a part of their daily life in Sheffield? Music occurs in every established religion and culture from past to present. It has become an integral human life component and differs greatly between time and place. In recent decades, a number of music researchers has shown an interest in the use of music in everyday life. However, there is less attention but increasingly important aspects of how people use music as part of their daily life after moving to a new city. So, the aim of this presentation is to investigate the relationship between the use of familiar music and the psychological states, new surroundings, and native culture in everyday life to address how students use music when they start their university life in a new city. To do this, first I'll review previous study about how people use music in daily life. Then the qualitative methods will be taken to investigate how Sheffield University students use familiar music. A phenomenon can be seen everywhere. People listen to music recreationally when they are doing tasks or traveling. So there is a question: why is the use of music everywhere? By summarizing existing studies, music could affect individuals' psychological states. According to Denora, music could contribute to self-regulation, modulation, identity, and that music could contribute to producing focus. Niemann et al. Have investigated the relationship between music and daily stress reduction. They found listening for relaxation seems to reduce stress. In addition, the daily use of music related to culture. Ja Coker discovered that English songs can help Chinese students adapt to American culture when they study in the US. It seems that the use of music in daily life may be an approach for individuals to improve their psychological well-being and adapt to a new culture. However, music could be new or familiar. What this study haven't fully explained is about familiar music. So, there are questions. Does familiar music always have positive effect on students' psychological states in daily life? How do new surroundings and native culture influence students' use familiar music? Whether the use of familiar music differs between home students and international students. The intention of this study is to understand the attitudes and experiences of how individual students use music in detail. A qualitative method is a well-established approach to explore people's experiences in this way. Brown and Clark in this book have well explained the advantage and disadvantage of using surveys, interviews, and focus groups. Focus groups have the most limitation on data collection, so this study wouldn't use it. Online questionnaire could quickly collect data. Semi-structured interview could effectively gather rich and in-depth data about individuals' experiences and perspectives. Therefore, the combined questionnaire and the semi-structured interview were taken for this research in order to collect general and detailed data. About participants, 26 participants signed the consent form and responded to the questionnaire. The age range from 19 to 41. 19 participants were international students, with the majority of them in the master program and live in the Sheffield for less than a year. 7 participants were home students from the UK, and they are all undergraduate students and considering themselves to be a musician. 6 of them lived in Sheffield between 1 and 2 years. The procedure of this project. Firstly, volunteer participants were recruited from students who are studying at the Sheffield University. Then, an online questionnaire was designed to collect overview data and recruit volunteers for follow-up interviews. 3 respondents were carefully chosen for the interviews, which depended on the responses to the questionnaire and intended to ask more in-depth questions to gather more detailed data. The interview was conducted through Skype due to the COVID-19 pandemic. All of the interviews were recorded and fully transcribed. This project has been ethically approved by the University of Sheffield Ethics Review Procedure and administered by the Department of Music. A thematic analysis was taken to analyze the data as is commonly used in a qualitative study in music psychology. As you can see, this is Brown and Clark 6 phases of semantic analysis. This study applies a similar approach to analyze the questionnaire and interview data. At first, these 6 themes were identified as potential themes. After reviewing, as you can see, psychological states include memories, social communication, and music genres were affected by new surroundings, and it could combine into one theme. Therefore, 3 principal themes were determined, which were the use of familiar music related to psychological states, new surroundings, and native culture. The result indicated a significant relationship between familiar music and psychological states. Familiar music could have negative influence on emotions, but also could regulate emotions, which depends on how people use it. This result extended theoretically findings of individuals use preferred music in the daily life to manage negative emotions. The result about new surroundings influences indicated that students listen to more new music than familiar music as new friends introduce it to them. Local music culture has a remarkable effect on home students' use of music. This may be thanks to home students growing up in the UK and have much more common sense about music culture. It's consistent with Denora's study that music was used to form an identity, making people integrate into other social groups. Therefore, home students may find it easier to assimilate into the local culture. The result also showed music involved with native culture. It has an important influence on international students. These students often listen to music from their home country. The reason for this may be related to Jao findings of music in the native language could contribute to emotion regulation and coping with negative moods from settling in a new country. It can be seen as the familiar music may have particular cultural symbols of the motherland that may give international students a sense of back home and coping with homesickness. However, this results from international interviewees appeared that they avoid listening to the native music which they often listen to under special circumstances. When the interviews were conducted, many countries were facing the spreading of a coronavirus, and Sheffield University had already suspended all face-to-face teaching. In light of this unexpected outbreak, international students may have been more worried about the families and friends than home students, as they are far away from home. Native music normally associated with cultural elements, which could make them think about home. In conclusion, familiar music could influence students' psychological states positively or negatively. New surroundings and native culture influence students to listen to more or less familiar music. New music culture has the most influence on home students, while native music culture have the most influence on international students. However, there are some limitations. The findings from interviews based on only 3 participants. That may be slightly weak to reflect the experience of all students from around the world. Here is the references I have used in this presentation. Thank you for listening.